Okay, and so welcome. I'm here with Danny Smith.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here and see you all.
Glad to have you here. I was just telling the group that actually Colleen won't be here today. She is en route to Egypt. And her and my dad are going on a major vacation spiritual trip there. So she'll be gone for a couple weeks here in the distance Reiki share. We're hoping that she'll be able to send some video from there, maybe even some guided meditations. If she gets a chance, that would be amazing. And if she does, we'll definitely share with the group here. So we'll see how that all goes. But anyways, I just wanted to say welcome. A few announcements. We have classes coming up in October for Reiki Lifestyle. So you can find those at Reiki Lifestyle. I know that we have Animal Reiki Masterclass October 25th through the 27th, and Animal Reiki 1 and 2 on October 28th and 29th. And then Colleen is teaching Karuna Reiki Master, Holy Fire Karuna Reiki Master, October 20th through the 22nd. So you can find all of those at ReikiLifestyle.com. It is the last Animal Reiki Masterclass for 2023, and Colleen's last Karuna Reiki Masterclass for 2023. We teach those again in January and February, respectively. So, but if you've been called to take them, definitely look those up and see if it's the right timing for you. We'd love to have you join us. So, Danny, are there other announcements that I need to make? Yes.
The Hawaii class in
Thank you.
November.
Yes, thank you. So, Colleen, I guess it's not technically her last Karuna class because she is teaching a 7-day Karuna class in Hana, Hawaii, along with William Rand. Her October one is online, and then her November one is actually in person in Hana, which is on the island of Maui. And so it's just an amazing, amazing class. It's not just Karuna Reiki class. There's also experiences such as waterfalls, and William's property there is absolutely amazing. It's off grid, amazing food, and it's just really a beautiful and stunning place. As far as Maui is concerned, Hana is on the other side of Maui, across from Lahaina. And many of the people of Maui have, they've, of course, talked to William. They've been in touch with all of the locals, and many of the people are actually asking people to come there because so much of their economy depends on tourism. And so, they're asking for that part of it to kind of come back around so that they can help more of their community members. And so just so you know, that's definitely something they have asked people to do. So that's an amazing class. That one you can find at reiki.org. So that's where you sign up for that one. Okay, that's good. Danny definitely lets us know when we get off track. So awesome. All right. Well, so we have been kind of talking about some of the more common things that you might hear about in healing, energy healing, Reiki, not as much to do with Reiki itself, but some of the other spiritual concepts that you hear about in spiritual communities, things like that. So over the last few weeks, we have talked about ancestral history. We've talked about past lives in different ways. We've talked about the descendants in different ways. You can find all of those on the podcast. You can also find them on our YouTube channel as well. And so it's, so many of us know about all of those things. We've been trained in them, those kinds of things. But one of the things that we kind of slanted it around how you use Reiki to, investigate these things within ourselves, how you use Reiki to go into these different topics, and how Reiki works with it. So one of the other things that, especially right now, is kind of a topic that is up is imposter syndrome. And really, when it comes down to it, because I was really listening around this subject, in the last few days, and how I kind of wanted to talk about it. Really, when it comes down to imposter syndrome, is that there are blocks, spiritual blocks, that can be the cause of imposter syndrome. Also, it's really down to limiting beliefs within it. And that is a really big part of what we talk about within the Reiki communities, what we talk about in the spiritual communities. Of course, we know that these things can entail different aspects of ourself, whether it is ancestral or genetic or familial, generational. It can be from past lives. It can be from culturally created self. It can be from cords and connectors, even like oaths or vows or promises that we've taken in this lifetime or past lifetimes. That can be the cause of this idea of imposter syndrome. And so, I know that I've heard a lot recently about this idea of imposter syndrome, and then also going into introspection with my own things around that, because what it comes down to too is that I think that there's so many of us that can have kind of the very light version of imposter syndrome to the very heavy version of imposter syndrome. With many of these things, it is a spectrum. I also think that because there's different types of imposter syndrome, that I think that there's kind of many of these things that we might fall a little bit into different categories, or there's one category that you're like, yep, that's me. that one, that's me. So I thought it would be a good thing to talk about. I also, have been hearing that the guided meditation or invocation or journey is going to be about kind of releasing some of those limiting beliefs that might be contributing to this idea of imposter syndrome for ourselves. The other thing that I want to say too is that, when it comes to this idea of imposter syndrome, there's also a lot of empowerment in the different ways that we might feel it, or the different types of people, or the ways that it can express. So it is about this healing idea, but it's also not about changing who we are as people. That there can be, these really big gifts within this idea of how our imposter syndrome might express. So I made an outline. So not so much about like the imposter syndrome, but there's a few different types. And that was one of the things that I didn't want to get wrong when I was expressing the types. I know what types I am, but there's 5 different types of imposter syndrome. And so I wanted to make sure that I got that information right. So what is it? It is this idea. I mean, it's kind of what it defines itself within its title. It's this idea of feeling inadequate. There's self-doubt. Also, there can be insecurity. Also, there can be this kind of fear as being exposed as a fraud. It can be, doubting our own accomplishments or downplaying our own accomplishments. And I think that it comes up a lot in this idea of Reiki, because we can be in this training, and this training so many times is from experts in the field. And then we come out of training and maybe we even have practice time or built up our skills. And even within that, we can still feel like, but I'm not as good as this other person. And from a point of vulnerability for myself, it's coming into this Reiki practice under Colleen, who at that time had, about 20 years of experience, even though I was raised in it. And I do think that there's some of that I came in with a certain knowledge base because I was raised in it. I'm still around, I'm still calling under Colleen, and I'm business partners with Colleen. And with that comes this entire field of professionals, right? With LRMTs, with William Rand. You want to talk about imposter syndrome? That's a little bit of a place that I will fully admit. I'm very grateful for being a part of this very established business and all of that. So there is that side of it. But in this moment, since we're talking about the subject, that is a big area that, I'd had to work through, that I had to do a lot of Reiki work around. And I know that that is a common struggle for many people, is that because we might have been taught by these very established businesses, we come out of it with this idea of like, how will I ever know as much of them? How will I, I don't know as much as them. So therefore, my experience, my perception, my viewpoint, my voice must not be as valid around this. And so, I think that's why there's so many of us that it's so common for this. Now, when we're talking about imposter syndrome, it can be for a personal practice and it can also be for a professional practice. So it can manifest in ourselves from, even if we're just in it just for us or for our personal reasons. It can manifest it for itself if we did this to be, for our family and friends or to volunteer with it. It can manifest in those scenarios. And then it definitely can manifest when we are wanting this to be a business or full-time professional practice. So there's all sorts of ways that imposter syndrome can manifest. So there is, you can feel kind of like a fake, or one of the ones is like attributing success to external factors. Downplaying success. I know this is one I'm very guilty of. Anytime I have a success or complimenting, that can be a place where, it can make some of us uncomfortable around it. Fear of failure or fear of success. So that was an interesting one that I had to kind of work through, is fear of success around it. And fear of success, or also rejecting praise or downplaying success. Some of that, when we're talking about it with Reiki, has to do with receiving as well as other things. And we'll get to, so we have all of these ways and what it is, but how do we actually go into solution with it? And how does Reiki help us to go into solution with it, and how does it heal and how does it reveal it? So there's 5 types, as I said. There's the perfectionist. So it has to be perfect or it's failure. There can be delegation issues. There can be micromanaging, struggling with decisions, that it all has to be perfectly in line before you can start or before you can do this or that. So there's that idea of the perfectionists. So one of the ways that we can use Reiki for this is allowing that Reiki energy to come in and to help us to manage letting go of the places that we can let go of, to make space for the things that we need and the things that we need to do. Also, really using Reiki, because one of the things that Reiki does is it not only heals and lets go of things, but it also fills us up. It empowers our life force energy, our strengths, and it also highlights our gifts and talents. So if we can go into this idea that we can highlight our strengths instead of just our deficits. Also, this is a place that we might have to let go of a lot of culturally created self, maybe from generational pressure. Maybe our parents put a lot of pressure on us in school, or we put a lot of pressure on ourselves in school. So, there's that part of our culturally created self, or we have to, have a certain image or look a certain way. Now, I want to also, re-emphasize that it's not about changing who we are, because there's so many gifts and talents around this idea of perfectionism, right? This idea of we do pay attention to the details. You might be one of those people that is really able to see details, and you always have your paperwork in line, and you always have these things that can be really, really helpful. So it's not about saying that part of you is bad, or that you need to change this piece of you. What it's about is about Reiki helping and support to release any unhealed parts of it, any of the kind of shadow side to it, and allowing those light sides of them, the healed parts of you, to shine. And how do we, it's a stress reduction technique, it's a wellness technique, leading us onto these paths of our authentic self being more and more revealed. So it's about allowing the Reiki energy, spirit guides, however you work with energy medicine, it's about allowing that to release any places where it's limiting you, where it's kind of maybe causing that failure to launch, or paralysis, or decisions. I can't make this decision because everything needs to be perfect around that. So it's about that piece of it, and then also empowering the parts that this is a strength. How does that look? How does that feel? And listening to Reiki about that piece of it. So perfection, and that applies to all of the 5 types, right? Again, it's not about changing who you are, how you like to do things, how you work, how things work for you. So it's not about that. It's about releasing the unhealed pieces to you in all of these categories. So then the next one is superhuman. So this one, I think we kind of know. Also, it is always wanting to do more and more. One of the places that this can be a struggle is, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this. And also, we live in society, so we also have our lives to live. We can lead very busy lives, if we are all sorts of reasons that we live very busy lives. I think it's just a given in most of our lives in today's world. But then especially if you add on caregiving or parenting, or, maybe as you're starting your business, you are or Reiki practice or volunteering, you have a full-time job, or maybe you have to work more than a full-time job. So there's all of these different reasons that we can have so many different lines and things that we're doing, and balls that we need to juggle, that we do have this idea of superhuman. And again, it is about using Reiki to move into solution around it. So Reiki for self-care, for nervous system balance. If you need to release one of the things, again, that's about making space for things that you want to follow. If you have a tendency to start a million different projects because you want to do it all, are there ways to use Reiki to focus on the different ones? And are there ways to kind of go into that? You have that, and we have this journey on our YouTube that you can, go into the eagle view and then go into the mouse view, or those journeys that we have. What is your one next step? So there's these places, these things that Reiki can really help you to be able to navigate, how this can cause you to not again, that failure to launch or to not get as much, further in your Reiki practice that you may want, or also that if you can't do all of it, that you are, in some ways a failure, or some ways an imposter, because you might see, these established Reiki practitioners that have all of these established lines and different things that they're doing in their practices. And if you can't do that, then for some reason, that also gives you that imposter syndrome. So that's another one. Then you have natural genius. This is, the third one. They're not in any particular order, but this is another one. So this is a really big one that you see in Reiki, because I do think that there is this, we have a kind of a mix of people that come into Reiki. You do have people that come in because they have natural spiritual gifts. Maybe they have psychic impressions, or maybe they see through veils easily, like they may see spirits easily. And they come into it because they know that they need help to be able to manage it. It's what called them to Reiki. It's helping to answer some of those questions, so that there's these naturally gifted people. And so we might think that if we're not one of these people, that therefore I may not, that I'm not good enough. I'm not as good as them because I'm not naturally gifted like that. Or, maybe you have learned Reiki and that's not what you're worried about, but, you have, you're not able to, like the first thing that you try is not your masterpiece. So maybe there is some things that you have to come back to or continue to work on. And if it doesn't, happen in your first try, then that kind of evokes shame and that paralysis, where then, or that you feel that you're not as good as other people within this industry. And so that's another thing, another type of imposter syndrome. And one of the ways that you can use Reiki for this is to, first of all, release that, right? Because comparison is the thief of joy. And in all of these categories, that's a really big part of it, is that we have to allow Reiki to help us and support us when we go into those comparisons. Because I think that's normal. I think it's natural. I think it's, we all try as much as possible to not have that comparison. Some of us have accomplished that and managed that. I know that I'm not one of those people yet. It's not, I don't do it all the time, but you'll find yourself in comparison. And I think it's pretty normal and natural, and have to kind of remember, like, oh wait, no, I don't need to compare myself to other people. I am who I am, and allowing that Reiki to continue to reveal your authentic self in your heart, and express your Reiki practice through that. Also, one of the things that Reiki can help you do, the mental emotional symbol, is really helpful for using Reiki for consistency. So one of the quotes that we talk about, that is a helpful statement, that was William Rand's, is Reiki, definiteness of purpose sustained over time always produces results. There can be things that take years and years to accomplish. And, you just continue to take one step, one foot in front of the other, or, one next step. And that over time it produces results. And know that we all have different gifts in different ways, that not consider, I never, I don't see through the veils. I don't have what we would consider natural gifts in those ways, but I have a lot of gifts in a lot of other areas. And to know that that is a part of Reiki practice too, and that people also identify with that, and it gives them permission to love an Excel spreadsheet and still be an accomplished Reiki practitioner. So there are those things as well. Then you have the soloist. And so this is one of those that you need to figure everything out on your own. You might feel incompetent to ask for advice. That this is one of those places that you feel like maybe you don't know anything if you have to ask a question of somebody. And also that you may need to do everything on your own. So delegation can be challenging for you, and you're just trying to juggle so many things that eventually maybe everything falls, right? That's a one of the hazards of this type of imposter syndrome. And again, because we can't do everything on our own, that this is a place where you might feel like it can be challenging to feel like you don't deserve a Reiki practice, or those kinds of feelings that can come up. So one of the places that Reiki can help you with this is it can release many unhealed parts of ourselves, but hyper independence. So that's a place that you can, look into Reiki with. Of course, with all of this, Reiki is a complementary therapy. And so we also, if you need to talk to a therapist or something like that about these things, of course, Reiki is going to complement these things. So I do want to make sure that I have that caveat. So that is a place that it can release that. Also, making sure you're celebrating your success and when it's appropriate for your Reiki practice, because sometimes, it takes a while for you to get to the point where you may need to delegate, right? So for many of us, this might not be applicable because for our Reiki practice, because maybe we're just doing it for ourselves. Maybe we are just doing it for friends and family. Maybe we're doing it just to volunteer. We can still have these types of imposter syndrome, though. And so just always, remembering to celebrate your success. Things that can be helpful for that is gratitude journal, things like that really, you have to go into that practice of like, okay, here's my success today. I talked to one person about Reiki today. That is a place that I was successful. And so that is a success. That's something to celebrate. And that could be sometimes the hardest thing to do is talk to one person outside of your Reiki community about Reiki. I know for many of us, that is kind of one of the places that it's like, I just have to get over that one hump, that one step. So that's a place that, that's a huge success to do that. For those of us that like to talk about it or that want to talk about it on social media, sometimes that first post is the hardest about it. And so really celebrating that success of that first post, to kind of just get over that, again, that block, that limiting space. And then we have the expert. So not knowing everything denotes not knowing anything. So not knowing can be failure and shame. Sometimes where it comes in is you need to pursue every training before starting, because you might have taken a class from somebody that has been doing this for a long time. Maybe you didn't take a class from somebody that's been doing it a long time, but it still has that perception of that this, that I don't know enough around it. And so therefore I'm, maybe not worthy of having a Reiki practice or giving Reiki. Some of the things that can be challenging is things like not knowing your hand positions, right? We don't remember them all perfectly after the first Reiki class, like Reiki 1 or Reiki 2. So symbols, also not knowing the symbols, right? Especially the distance symbol. That's really a big one where we might not know that. And so there can be limiting beliefs around that. And then there can be some procrastination because you feel overwhelmed. So This again is one of those places where Reiki can really help. The idea that you can't start even right where you're at. And Reiki, with affirmations around it, journaling to highlight any knowledge or achievements. Finding a Reiki community to share this stuff can be really helpful too. Maybe there's a Facebook group that you can find to feel comfortable to share these feelings. So that part can be really helpful too. Um, and, again, I just really also want to emphasize that it is not a bad thing. All of these categories, you don't want to change yourself, right? It's okay that you like to seek knowledge. It's okay, just as in this example of the expert, it's okay that you want to pursue training from, people that you perceive as the experts in the field. It's okay that you, feel more comfortable talking about Reiki after you've had a certain amount of training. All of that is okay, and it's not about changing who you are. It's again of really going in and listening to the Reiki energy about any of these parts or any of these ideas of imposter syndrome that might be holding you back. So if you feel like it's holding you back from something, from expressing who you are, expressing your Reiki practice in the way that you want to express it, then that's where you have to look at the Reiki energy to help you lift kind of those lower density ideas about yourself, about your Reiki practice, and use it to help release that so that you can go into your authenticity, into the healed versions, into your authentic self, and also using that voice, and voice isn't just always to other people. Voice is also to ourselves, right? It's also our own inner confidence and own inner knowing, and also that self-talk. Oh, I'm not as good as because A, B, and C. So even if you don't have an interest in talking about it to anybody, it's just this idea of I'm not as good as A, B, and C because. So, the other one too, this isn't a type. And also, like I said, you might find different parts of yourself in those types. So it may not be just one category. It may not just be one category. It might be like, oh yeah, I identify with that. Oh, I identify with that. The other one is expectations and comparisons in Reiki. Like I said before, I know many of us, we think like, oh, we need to be a healer. Or like I put a healer in quotations is probably a better way to say that. A healer, or act or look a certain way around what that means. And the good thing about Reiki is it requires no spiritual belief system. You get to be who you are within it, and there is a space for you and your authentic expression of Reiki, because there is a space for those of us that are kind of full scale woo woo. And I love that. And then those of us that are kind of on the full opposite end of what that kind of looks like as we think about it, as we think of that. Those of us that may, have a high powered corporate job, for example, and we're always in that kind of wear. And, we have that very professional look type thing. And then anywhere in the middle of that. So I have somebody on Facebook, I can't think of who it is right now, but somebody on Facebook that is, so authentically themselves, and has a Reiki practice, and talks about how she swears like a sailor, and has a successful Reiki practice, or podcast with Raven Keys, when she talked about, she's got this practice that she's in operation rooms giving Reiki for 10 to 12 hours, and yet she's talking about Glastonbury, England, and she's got a dreadlock in her hair with beads. And so you get to be authentically you. And what Reiki helps you to do is helps you to really allow that part of yourself. It releases the layers that hide that. And it also helps guide you and talk to you about your Reiki practice and what that looks like. So it is about releasing these things that cause stagnation in your Reiki practice, whatever that looks like. And Danny, I don't know if you want to talk about any of this. And also, I always love what you talk about just starting.
Yeah, God, I have so many things popping up. The first one that came to me was, well, what you admire in someone else, you have it within you, right? I mean, I always believe in that. You're attracted to it. You're like, oh my gosh, she just speaks so great, or she looks so good, or she decorates so well. Well, you have that in you, otherwise you wouldn't even notice it. So that's one thing. Um, my imposter syndrome was when I had the most amazing Reiki practice in this wellness center. It was so cute. I loved everything in it. And I was going through a divorce. And I felt like, how can I possibly show up and give Reiki and healing to someone when I was going through so many changes and emotions? And I mean, it was so bizarre timing, right? Because I had this great place. Anyway, so I had to work through that, and my clients still, loved the energy and everything, but I felt kind of like a fraud. I'm like, how can I possibly give advice or healing when I felt so broken? So that was one thing. Another is, I did get over it though. I mean, my clients loved it. They were very happy. So again, stepping out of the way, letting Reiki do its thing and not taking it so personally. Also, like you said at the beginning, is like working with Colleen. I mean, I was her student for many, many years. And so I'm like, there's no way I can talk like Colleen. I can't say there's angels on the four corners of the land and be me. I mean, I don't talk like that. And it works for her, and I love it. But I just don't speak that way. So I had to realize how I speak, and people that get that, well, they'll be my clients and my colleagues. And I do have them now. I mean, all the people I work with now are, we just say what we mean, in our own words. And yeah, I think those are the big things. But yeah, the imposter syndrome is, I think, experience and practice and just doing it over and over. I mean, geez, when we first started these calls, just being so nervous to even come on video and feeling there's no way I can do this. And now I'm like, I'm so excited because we do it over and over and get used to it, and seeing all these faces, the same faces for all these years, and just being there for each other. And that's what it really comes down to. It's kind of like Colleen says, it's our contribution, right? It's not about us. It's just about being there for others. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. I like that. It's same with like parenting and when you accidentally raise your voice at your kid. How can I be this Reiki practitioner and have this? I'm not Zen all the time. And I apologize when that happens. It's not like I make a habit of that or do that, but it does. There's this moment of, so thank you. That's a great example. I love that. All right. So again, how Reiki can help with this. Releasing limiting beliefs, blocks, empowering authentic self, helping you to be okay with your voice too. There's a lot of times what comes through is chakra work. One of the places that we find this commonly is in the throat chakra, which is, pretty makes sense. It's about voice and power and inner truth. And also in the solar plexus chakra. That kind of outward expression of self. So those are a couple of places that it's common to find this. And then, like I said, receiving. So receiving the idea, even to yourself, of your own successes, receiving compliments or successes from, awareness from other people, and really working on that receiving aspect. And that is one of the places that Reiki can really heal and help. Embracing that things change, that you change, that your Reiki practice changes. It's okay that, you have tried one thing and it's not really for me, so I'm going to try a different thing. Or maybe it didn't work, and that's okay too. That Reiki's changes and evolves over time, and we do as people, especially when we have Reiki practices where we practice, consistently. There also can be supportive community, mentorship that can really help so that you can share these feelings. Sometimes they can be hard to talk about or even admit, that there's a piece of this that is kind of holding you back. And so that can be a really helpful thing to do, is find that realistic expectations. I'm not going to have this huge burgeoning practice on day one, that those things take time, that you can practice day one with self Reiki and on other people and all of that. But some of these things realistically take time, and that's okay too. Sometimes they take less time for some of us than others, and that's great as well. But just remembering that consistency helps, and that also things like self Reiki and journaling can be really helpful for that part of it. Also releasing culturally created self, right? That there is so much in our culture, in this culture, other cultures, not as much, that we have to let go of, especially if we've had any sort of things like this in school, or pressure from, outside places, familial pressure, and or if you've been through academia, for example, that there might be those realistic expectations that need to set in. Self-care, self Reiki, and then sessions from others. Sometimes people from people outside of ourselves can see some of these things, or Reiki sessions from others, they can help with releasing limiting beliefs or blocks, or however that looks. And then, vulnerability, authenticity, that's a strength. We're all human. Again, like I said, or Danny said, we have these things in real life that happen for us and to us, and all of these things that Reiki helps support us through. And that, as I think I saw somebody in the chat put wounded healer as well, but also our joys and our successes and our outside life as well. That all is a part of it. And then the other one, because I know many people struggle with this one specifically, and I'm not going to go into it too much more than this, but imposter syndrome, especially on social media. So that is one of the places that people get really stuck on. And just know that it's just a post. I had somebody, I was taking some sort of workshop from somebody, and that was what he said. He's like, it's just a post. It's okay. It's just a post. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. It's like, release the ego around it. It's just a post. You can delete it. Also the other big thing that I say a lot is embrace your cringe. We all look back. I look back, Danny, you mentioned when we first started these, you look back and you're like, yeah, I've gotten better at that over time. And it's okay. I just embrace my cringe. I may not go back and watch it or even look at it. But I'm not going to delete it, because I'm like, that's who I was then. That's who I needed to be. I was exactly where I need to be. And now I'm exactly where I need to be now. And in 10 years from now, I will be exactly who I am supposed to be then, and exactly where I'm supposed to be then. And so just know everybody cringes at their outward things that from forever ago. And it's okay. So just embrace your cringe rather than trying to change your cringe. It's okay. We're all going through that same process. And Reiki helps to support us in that, empower us in that, empower your voice, empower your throat chakra, and empower you.